episode of the Mental Health Movement podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. I just wanted to, before we get into today's podcast, I want to express my thanks to all my listeners on the last couple episodes. Derek has been a really good guest. We had a really good conversation in two different parts that I felt like a lot of people either related to or felt his story a lot stronger than I thought people would. And I'm really happy of the reaction. I can't wait for you guys to hear the Reese episode. So today's special guest has been a game developer for over 30 plus years and has worked on projects with Capcom, 3DO Studios, and so much more. He is not only a fellow warrior, he has also come to talk to us today about a card game that he had created geared towards the mental health community. So please help me welcome Alex Jimenez. Alex, how are you, man?
There we go. Hey, how you doing?
Thank you so much for coming on today's podcast. It definitely means a lot to me to have somebody of your experience and, I'm a fellow gamer, and when Dave had told me about what you did and just everything that you've created, genuinely appreciate you coming on here. So thank you again.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So to start off today's podcast, before we get into the details of what you do, as a fellow gamer, first question I want to ask you is what got you into the game development?
The most powerful force known in the universe, dumb luck. I was in the Bay Area when a friend of mine came to me and told me that she had a friend at Capcom that was working on a Dungeons and Dragons game, coin op, but none of them there ever played Dungeons and Dragons. And none of them actually played the game. So as a result, TSR, which at the time controlled the license, was really fed up with them. And she suggested that I go in there as an advisor to show them how to play the game. And I did that. And then we had a big meeting with TSR, and the Japanese presented another concept, which they just hated. And I don't know what happened. Something snapped in me and I went, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we do this? And I set it up like a regular D&D game. And TSR was like, yes, that's exactly what we want. That's perfect. That's what we want you to do. We're glad you're on the right track now, And after the meeting, I felt bad because I wasn't supposed to talk. And I was only part-time anyway. And the head of the Japanese department, Mr. Hirao, when I apologized to him, he gave me this look, and now I'm going to keep the language as it was. This is a direct quote from him in his broken English. Oh, what the fuck you talking about? You save project, So he started talking in Japanese, and he grabbed a big pile of papers and books and notebooks, and he hands them to me. He goes, go, make game. And at the time, I had no idea. I'd never made a video game before, but as my wise grandfather used to say, don't let not knowing how to do something stop you from doing it.
That's a wise man.
Well, he was the wisest man on the planet. I quote him constantly. But so I told him I couldn't come into. He goes, well, start right away, start tomorrow. And I said, well, tomorrow's a Saturday. I don't have a card. I'm not an employee. And he's like, you're not an employee. And he turned to his secretary, put him on the fucking payroll already. And he took his card off, gave me his card, said, go make game, So I just kind of landed, and 2 years later we did this one. That was Tower of Doom, the first D&D Tower of Doom game we did. So awesome. That was, and that got, and then after that I did Darkstalkers, and I was on my way. I got hooked. I found that I really loved making games. It was so much fun. So I just got hooked and took it from there.
I couldn't imagine walking into a field that you're just, so either really unfamiliar about like every aspect of it, and then just like say, you're a full-time employee and you're going to be making a game like the very first project you do. That's incredible.
Yeah, like I said, dumb luck. It really was dumb luck. I just stepped into it literally, and had a small talent for it, and took it from there. And
how old were you when you got that opportunity?
That was in 1991.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a while ago. It was a while ago. So that's 32. I was 29 at the time, I think, 28, 29. So yeah, that's when I was a young man. Hmm. Back then we had 16 bits and we liked it.
I love it. It's
Yeah.
it's incredible when you find opportunities like that, being at a young part of the world. I mean, getting into your 30s, they say we thrive our hardest when we're in our 30s and we find our passion around then. So to be able to, I guess, be in that position, and is that what kind of cup is that? So
My God.
yeah, like
It's
a mad scientist in his lab.
it's an Erlenmeyer flask. Well, all of my stuff is glass. I use all my lab glassware for my drinking cups. That way I know exactly how much I'm drinking, And my wife can't poison me because it's clear. I can see. Hang on a second here. It was at 300 milliliters a second ago. Now it's at 350. What you put in there,
um, but when you're able to find that passion at just such a young age and then stick with it for as long as you have, I mean, that's incredible because I feel like it's hard to stay in, I guess, stay passionate about something for so long in certain fields.
I'm a married man, so
Fair,
I don't
fair.
think passion. I don't think passion is something age related. And I don't think any person has only one passion. I think you develop multiple ones as you go through life.
Right.
And gaming has always been something I love because I'm a performer. I love to make people smile. I love to make them laugh. I'm from the East Coast, grew up on the East Coast, and I discovered at a young age when people are laughing with you, they're not punching you. So comedy became a defense mechanism for me,
I love it.
and it works. It really did work. So
Brilliant. So just to follow up on that question, what has been your favorite part of being a game developer?
you know, there's a lot. I mean, I used to tell my students, if you're doing this for fame and fortune, you're in the wrong business. Okay, you got to do it. Game development is like all entertainment businesses, it's a very grueling business. People don't realize how hard it is, programming, artwork, design, because I'm a designer. So, I've got to script out everything that happens in the game and everything that possibly can happen. It's pretty daunting sometimes. Give you an example. I have down here, if I can get it out. This here is what we call a design document. This is the design document for that game. Okay, this is just one of the design documents. That's just one,
One.
and
Oh,
I've got to
no.
write. I mean, I've got to write down every single thing that happens. I mean, the story ideas. I've got to sketch out all the things that happen in there. The
Wow.
pictures of the artwork of what the screen will look like when a character does something. So, I mean, this is just one. This is just one. There's a couple of others. So it's a very intensive, hard thing. But if you ask me what I think is the best, and what I used to tell my students, it's the knowledge. And this is going to sound kind of schmaltzy, but it's very true for me. It's the knowledge, knowing that my final product is going to make people happy. I the thought of, we're really busting our butt, but on Christmas morning, that kid's going to open up that package and freak out when he sees that game. He's just going to scream, yeah, and he's going to invite his friends over to play it with them, and they're going to play and they're going to laugh and they have a good time. That to me, there's nothing greater, that the knowledge that that's going to happen. If I can indulge 2 minutes on something that really puts it in perspective for me as a developer and designer, I was at a Comic-Con a few years back in, I think, 2010, and I did a lecture. I used to do a lecture for them, and I did a lecture on game development and whatnot. And after I was done, this young man came up to me. He's in his early 20s, and he wanted to shake my hand and really thank me. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad you like my game. He was talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the coin op D&D. And he stopped me and says, no, you don't understand. It's like, That game came out like 14 years ago already, you know. And he's like, when I was a kid, my mom and I used to go shopping every Saturday, and they used to have one of those D&D games at the supermarket. And my dad and I would play it. And my dad and I never really saw eye to eye. We never got along, but we would play it while mom shopped. You know, we'd sit out there and play this game while my mother did the shopping. It was the lesser of two evils, either going with mom shopping or playing the video game. He chose to play the game. And we had so much fun, and we talked about it all week at dinner, you know, and then we couldn't wait for the next Saturday to go back and try to take on the Black Dragon again, you know, or the Drow Lord. And for the next 2 months, because the game was there for about 2 months, he was like, every weekend, my dad and I would just hit that and play it and talk about it. And it was our common ground. We finally connected, you know, we connected as father and son. And it led to everything else. We just connected, and we got along, and we were father and son finally, you know. And he's like, that was so much for me, because my dad passed away about 2 years ago. And I'm my wife and I are expecting our first little one next December. And I was like, oh, that's great. And he's like, and you better believe we're gonna play Dungeons and Dragons, you know. And I had tears in my eyes. I was tearing up, you know. And I was like, he's like, so I just wanted to thank you. And I was like, no, thank you. You just justified my whole career, you know.
Right.
And that's when I realized what I really loved about gaming. That's what put it in crystal focus for me, that two people connected and had that life. And then when I told Dave about this, DeVries, because he was there with me, when I told Dave, wow, I actually helped two people come together, you know, that's so cool. He looked at me and he smacked me. He physically hit me and went, you're an idiot. And I'm like, well, do you really think, after all the games you've made dozens of games, do you really think only two people were connected because of all the work you did? It's like, you know how many thousands of people probably got together because some stuff you came up with, you know? And I thought about that, and I was like, it never even occurred to me. But I did realize that's what I loved most about gaming. I still do. I still do. I love it when people tell me they played my games at a good time, you know, had fun, made memories. That made it all worthwhile. And that's what I tell my students. I said, that's what you're shooting for. That's what you got to get out of it.
And you can't put a price tag on that either, man.
No, no.
I
There's no
remember
standard.
one time I was going out to go watch the sun go down. It was like a cooler night out, and I just wanted to go walk out by the docks. And my friend and I, when the sun finally went down, you know, there was no more colors to see. We were starting to walk back towards the car, and there's this kid standing to the right side of the docks. He turns and looks at me, and we lock eyes. I'm like, he looks familiar, and I'm not sure. And he calls me by my last name. He's like, Milson? And I'm like, it took me a second to register. I'm like, Copeland? He's like, what are you doing here? And I haven't seen this guy in like maybe 10, 15 years. And he's like, oh, I'm just out here just to, you know, get some clarity and some peace because I got a lot going on in my life and stuff. And he's like, it's crazy that I'm seeing you right now. He's like, I just wanted to tell you really good job on the podcast and everything. It's great what you're doing with the mental health stuff. This, you know, a lot of people need it, and I'm one of those people that listen to it. And you know, again, I haven't talked to this guy in like 15 years, and for it to reach somebody like that, or you know, just have somebody send you a message and say, hey, like every podcast you put out, I have a notepad with me just to listen to what you guys talk about and take notes on the conversation. So I can totally relate on, you know, the impact that it leaves on people because you underestimate how much you do for people because sometimes it feels like you just have your head down, you're grinding all the time. It's like, oh well, you know, I put all this stuff out and I think it's great, but you don't know how many people it affects until, you know, you have somebody, a friend like Dave or those two people that reach out to you and tell you how much of an impact you're making.
Mhm. You
And
tend not to believe it until you hear it from somebody else.
yeah, and
That's
especially
the
people
difference.
you don't know personally
Yeah.
or somebody you haven't seen in like 15 years. It's a crazy ride, man. Um, is there a favorite project that you've worked on? Assuming the original D&D game that you worked on is one of your favorites.
Yeah, well, that was my firstborn. So I mean,
Right.
that's the first one that I did from start to finish. There were a number of other projects that I was like, oh, here, we need you to write this, or we need you to write that. Um, you know, my three favorites of all. I loved D&D. Darkstalkers was another one that was near and dear to me because I love monsters and whatnot. You know, I couldn't do what I originally wanted, which was the Universal movie monsters, which are my all-time favorites. But creating the Darkstalkers, that was cool. That was a lot of fun. The fact that they're still using them 30 years later, they're still using the same exact write-ups that I wrote 30, because I saw it the other day. I went to a show, and when I was at the Comic-Con with Dave, I saw some action figures hanging on a pegboard, and I took, hey, check it out, it's Mortigain. I took it all, and I turned the back around, and there's the same exact write-up I gave her back in 1993. I was like, damn, like 30 years later, they're still using the same copy, ad copy I did. It's like, man, if I had got royalties on that, I could retire. That one and Marvel Superheroes was a blast. That was fun. I got to get into the background with Marvel because we had done X-Men, and that was a big hit. And then next year we followed up by doing Marvel Superheroes, the War for the Gauntlet. We were the first ones to do the Infinity Gauntlet, actually, long before anybody else did it. We did the Infinity Gauntlet. And that was just so much fun. I got to go to Marvel in New York, and I got to go backstage and meet all the folks, and they were just terrific as hell. So that was a lot of fun. I got to totally nerd out completely.
I've always found the Comic Cons are, they're always so much fun to see, either what artists are there or who people dress up as. Because, like you said, I'm a really big comic book fan myself. Deadpool's my favorite character. And I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, Dave was sitting next to a guy who illustrated one of the Deadpool comics that I have. And I remember walking up to him, like, I didn't know what to say. I was so nervous. I'm like, dude, I love your work. Like, it's so good. And he's like, oh, I love your Deadpool tattoo. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. But I couldn't imagine working with Marvel. That must have been an incredible experience.
It had its, trust me, it had its ups and downs on that one. We had a bit of a roller coaster on things because they, this was back in the 90s when Marvel was going through some rough financial spots. So they were very nice to us because we basically were we were giving them a ton of money for these things, and they were really happy with that. The thing that got me about best was I was there, and I remember at one of the meetings, Dana Mooreshead, who at the time was charge of that, and the head of the licensing was a real funny guy named Joe Calamari, really nice guy. I remember Dana turning and telling my boss, he goes, we love working with you guys because Alex is the only licensor that actually has read the comics. He knows the characters. It's right. Like he's a nerd making, and I was like, I'm a nerd living a nerd's dream life. Come on, it's like I've combined the two things I love best. Well, one of the two things I love best in life, which is comics and video games. It's like, this is awesome. And I had just done Dungeons and Dragons, which I really, really love. So it's like, I'm living the nerd paradise here, man. It's great. I couldn't ask for more. But yeah, it was definitely, it's a business. It's a business. You gotta do a little pull and take here and get what you want. Right. And like I said, you want to make it so the players love it and like it. That's their thing. And the players all have their own different ideas of what they want. I mean, the last project at Capcom, and I tried to vote against it, and it turned out to be one of the most popular ones, and I was dead set against it, which was Marvel versus Capcom. I despised that. I really hated that, and it was not because the concept of the game was wrong. I thought that was a cool idea, doing a crossover like that, but they picked the wrong ones. The list I sent them is I wanted street level heroes. I wanted Moon Knight, Captain America, Daredevil, Luke Cage, the street level characters, street level heroes versus the Street Fighters. That to me made sense. Moon Knight versus, Rue would have been a good fight. But the ones they took to me didn't make sense. It's like, I don't care how skilled Chun-Li is. She can't karate chop the Hulk. That just isn't going to work, Right. Let's be realistic, folks, so.
I would probably be in the same mindset. Like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. I kind of felt like that with DC versus Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, that was another one. But at least for that one, they had the excuse of, oh, well, they're taking kryptonite pills that make them super strong and tough and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever.
Right,
You know,
right.
if that's what you got to tell yourself to help you sleep at night, fine. You know, I
I
do
was so mad
remember.
playing the game.
I do remember one of my ideas was to have a Marvel versus DC. And I floated that to them. So let's do a Marvel versus DC. I think that'd be so awesome to have Captain America versus Batman and Hulk versus Superman. That would be cool, you know. And my bosses in Japan thought it was a great idea. Yeah, call up Marvel and DC and get it worked out, you know. So I called up Marvel. Oh no, excuse me, I called up DC first. I went through a tangle to get to DC because they're you got to go through Warner's and then you got to go through their licensors. That's a mess. But at the time, they're like, "Oh, that's a great idea. We love that." But our guys can't lose, okay? I'm on the phone going, okay. Tell you what, let me get back to you on this, you know? And I hung up the phone. I called up Marvel, and I didn't get Dana. I got somebody else. And I explained what I wanted to do, and they thought that was a great idea. Oh, that's a great idea. But our guys can't lose. And I'm on the phone. Literally, this is a true story. I'm like, are you guys sharing the same office or what? Are you on the other side of the freaking partition or something? So, needless to say, that didn't happen, and I severely doubt it ever will. I mean, I noticed that I got to hand it to the guys doing the Mortal Kombat franchise because they got everybody now. They got Omni-Man and Homelander and the DC character. I mean, they got everybody except Marvel.
Right.
You know, they got everybody else, and so that tells me that it'll never happen. You know, the companies are just too big to let that happen.
I've always found it interesting that in the world of how technology is and as crazy as it is, that we've never even gotten like any kind of a hint towards like anything Marvel DC. Like, and like you said, I don't think it'll ever happen either. But
well, they did do the Marvel DC comic book a few years back. They did do that one, and they've had like one shot things once in a while, but I severely doubt we'll ever see a video game or a movie, especially that ever even remotely touches on that.
Right.
And maybe that's for the best because they really are two separate universes. Stan Lee once said that the difference between DC and Marvel, and I agree with him, is with DC, you have gods who are trying to be human. And in Marvel, you have humans that have been given the power of the gods. And they're trying to balance that out. And that's the difference. Because you look at the DC heroes, you got Superman and Wonder Woman and these are gods, and with Marvel, with the exception of Thor, everybody else is basically human, so it's much more human. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've there was a conversation that we had. I believe I don't remember the other gentleman that Dave was on the stage with, but somebody was bringing up the Marvel DC argument as well, and I remember making a comment, and I said, I think the biggest difference between Marvel and DC is I feel, and this is just a personal opinion. I feel Marvel does a better job at storytelling than DC does, because at least from a movie perspective and the comics that I've read between the two, I just enjoy more what Marvel puts out opposed to what DC has put out. And I think it's because of the quote that you mentioned from Stan Lee, because you got gods trying to be human, and then Marvel is a completely different animal.
Yeah. I think they both have their strengths. I think, obviously Marvel's got them beat on movies. DC has them beat on animated series, on animation. DC's just smokes them. And then they both kind of have their pluses and minuses on the books. It's really, if you really want to see it though, you have to look at their impact on popular culture today. Their DC has got the edge, although it's but the movies now they're catching up too, because you hear it all the time. Who do you think you are, Superman? It's like and it's like, well, my one employee, when I got really mad one time, he joked to me, he's like, man, I expect you to turn green and start ripping your shirt. You were so mad. And this is the Chinese guy going, oh, you're so angry, I thought you're going to turn green and rip shirt. So you look at their impact on popular culture, and it's there. I mean, it's really powerful, and it's only going to get stronger. It really is, because I don't see anything else in popular culture or just culture period that's going to have that kind of effect, especially on a global scale.
Right.
Because due to the Marvel movies, especially, it's like everyone around the world knows who the hell Spider-Man is now. They all know who Iron Man is, you know? It's amazing. Yeah, people in Taipei who know who the hell Captain America is.
Right.
I didn't know who Captain America was a few years back, you know. So it's I think that's something that we as game developers and writers in the popular culture have to keep in mind, is that we're no longer pitching to a US audience. We have gone global. You know, US culture, pop culture especially, now has, for better and worse, global impact. You
Right.
know, that could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. You know, I mean, it's bad because we lose on the flavors of foreign culture, obviously, but it is a good thing because it also unites us.
Right.
You know, you go online, play an MMO, and you're playing with people from all over the world, you know, who have a shared passion, and that's really great. That unites us. It's ridiculous to think that of all the things that could unite us, video games and superheroes, you know.
Like I said at the beginning, when we started chatting, people underestimate the impact that video games in general have on people. I've met some of my best friends from video games,
Mm-hmm.
and I met somebody for the first time a year ago at one of my best friend's weddings. I've been friends with him online for over 10 years, and he came to our friend's wedding. It was really cool. I'm like, this is the craziest thing that has ever happened to me. Like 10 years, I've known this guy who lived in the same state, like 3 hours away, but we've never met each other, and he came for our friend's weddings. It was really cool. But video games, I feel like get a bad rep more oftentimes than they should.
Well, they're considered kid stuff.
Right.
That's the problem. It's like animated series. It's like an animation series. You know, for the longest time, America seems to be the only country that relegates cartoons to kid stuff. You
Right.
go to Japan and it's considered, no, this is for grown-ups, this is adults. You go to Europe and France and Germany, and their cartoons, they're not meant for kids. They're meant for adults, you know. Um, America tends to relegate games and cartoons and comics and role-playing games as kid stuff, you know. And I think that's changing now because, you know, we're all getting older, and, you know, I still play D&D. I mean, these are all RPG books. I still play them all the time, you know. So there's a whole new generation, in fact, two new generations coming up now, because the millennials and Gen Zers, you know, they grew up knowing only this. So for them, it's becoming so normalized. I think it's just going to slide right into the culture that way. You know, they'll no longer be kids stuff anymore. And that'll be a good thing too. That'll be a very good thing. Excuse me.
Um, so speaking on global impact, I want to dig a little bit more into the mental health aspect of gaming. So I'll start with this question. What does Men's Mental Health Month mean to you?
Mental health shouldn't be confined to 1 month, obviously. You know, I struggle with mental health issues myself. Okay. I don't like to say I suffer from it. When we did Daylight, the card game, one of our things was we're going to eliminate, and I caught myself doing it, was, oh, I struggle with depression. I'm like, no, I don't struggle with it. I don't suffer from it. You know, people say, oh, I suffer from depression. No, don't suffer, struggle. When you say you suffer from something, that means you're lying down and letting it beat you. I'd rather stand up and fight against it. You know, it's like, no. And that was one of the goals of this game, was to show people, no, don't just lie down and suffer from it. Stand up and struggle, you know, stand up and be strong. don't lie down and let it beat you. Mental health month for me is something, it's I think it's wonderful that we're putting a spotlight on this. And it's not a spotlight of shame anymore. You know, it's not like, oh, we're going to give you guys a month, just like Black History Month. We'll give them 1 month, and for the rest of the year, we'll treat you like crap. You know, it's like, no, this is different now. You know, when I was starting my game career 30 years ago, the joke used to be 24% of all Americans suffered or struggled with some kind of mental health issue. And the joke used to be, the next time you go out with, 25%, that's 1 out of 4. So if you're having dinner with with 3 of your friends and they seem okay, it's you. You know, now the number is completely reversed. Last I checked, when I first started doing this, 73% of Americans struggle with some kind of mental health issue. That's 3 out of 4 of us. So now when you go to dinner with 3 of your friends, you're probably the only sane one in the group. So I think it's really wonderful that we're elevating 1 month special to point this out, but it really should be something that we keep forefront in our minds at all times. We can't switch off our mental struggles.
Right.
It would be wonderful if we could. I struggle with depression and bipolar. I've been diagnosed with both. And I hear people who go, "Oh, it must be great to be bipolar because then you get all that work done, and you can relax for a little bit and get all that work done." So it made me so frustrated. I got so angry that I actually used that for one of my cards, one of the cards of Daylight, which is for bipolar. And I wrote the caption. Each card has a caption written by a person who has it, and the caption for bipolar is, "I don't switch on and off. I rev until the engine blows." That's bipolar for me.
Yeah.
That's bipolar. It's like, if you ask a bipolar person, that's what it is. It's not off, on, off, on. You just keep going until you blow, and then you've got to rebuild the engine from scratch.
Right.
And it's a long, hard struggle. It's this long, hard thing to put that back together again.
Absolutely. There's a comment I really want to highlight that you said, delegating it to 1 month. And, I have mentioned this in previous podcasts that I've done. I've spoken to it about my therapist. I actually had a session with her last night, just, kind of talking about, how it used to be taboo to have these kind of conversations. It was, you're always considered crazy if you had a therapist. That you were always had a black cloud over you. If you said that you had a shrink or that you had depression, you would get, put in an institution or something, right? And, as much as I'm happy that there are months that are dedicated to mental health, I 100% agree with you, because, it shouldn't be just 1 month, and in the days of social media, I think, it should be more than just the hashtag of the month. It should be more than just, speak out for men's mental health on just this day to this day. It should be, year round. And especially with males' suicide rate being so high. And the suicide rate in our youth is really bad too. I mean, I believe the demographic is 10 to 14. Second highest cause of death is suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking, and it's, I'm more than grateful to have this platform, and I'm grateful to have people of every kind of background, including yourself, being able to be open and speak on this, because 10 years ago we couldn't have this kind of conversation.
No.
We couldn't have that. And like you said, it used to be a running joke on people with mental health, like, "Oh, maybe you're the crazy one," or like you said, maybe you're the sane one now. And as much as it's starting to be normalized, we still have so much ground to cover, because I feel like as much as we talk about it now, it could be talked about so much more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, it's there's still, people say, "Oh, well, the stigma has been reduced." Yeah, kind of. We're kind of there. It's sort of like, it's like anything else, where it's like, publicly, yes, but there's still people, and it still makes them so uncomfortable that they're sort of like, "Oh, that's very nice that you're getting help,"
Mm-hmm.
and they'll give you all the platitudes of, "Oh, it takes a strong man to know when he needs help," and, "Oh, that's wonderful." And the minute you turn your back, they're like, "Wow, we always knew he was a little nuts,"
Yeah.
or even worse than that is like, people are like, they'll do anything for attention. It's like,
Yes.
I hate that. And
Me too.
the other one that gets me is, which actually inspired me to do Daylight in the first place, was I got so sick of people who, you tell them, "I struggle with depression," and it's like, "Oh, cheer up. I'll cheer
Mm,
you up, just cheer up, just look on the positive side of things. And I finally lost it. And I had to tell at a party, actually, I had this, and I just stood up and went, telling a depressed person to cheer up is like telling a cancer victim to stop having cancer.
right.
That's like saying, and you're trying to help, but your version of help is like giving chicken soup to a cancer patient.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, there's a physical mental illness here. The
Right.
brain is so complicated, we don't know. I mean, you can't just do that. And
Yeah.
when people say, well, what do you do? It's like, listen,
Yeah.
just listen, just listen, be aware of what's going on, be aware that people who are struggling with depression or mental illness, they don't want to be there either. you know it's that horrible realization you make when you struggle with mental health issues, and you get help. You make that horrible realization of, oh my God, you mean to tell me the calls are coming from inside the house?
Right.
you know
Yeah.
so it's people need to understand these things, and they are gradually, as more and more people, especially as celebrities and whatnot, come out and start saying, oh yeah, I have this problem, and bop bop bop. um the problem being, though, is mental health. And I think this is why I have a little problem with the monthly thing, is mental health issues cannot be put into a box.
That's.
There is no one box for mental
Mhm.
health issue,
Yep.
because like the brain itself, it's so complex and so multifaceted. It would be like trying to put the ocean into a 2 by 2 box. I mean, it's just by hand. you
Right.
know and I think that's what prevents it from getting the exposure it needs, because it's just too big.
Right.
It's too big. It's as
And
varied as each individual person. And that's just something most people can't get a grasp on, including us.
yeah. And I, that's why I firmly believe it should be a 365 thing, 24/7. It shouldn't be just 1 month because, like you said, there's so many different aspects of it. It's like it's great that they're starting to create weeks for certain mental illnesses and stuff, and they have autism acceptance and all that stuff. And it took me a long time to understand a lot of this community because it's just like a certain language, certain terminology, and I had one of my good friends on here a couple months ago. She's autistic, and so is her son. And when we first started going over questions and stuff just to see what she wanted to cover and talk about and stuff, she's like, can we change it from awareness to acceptance? Because autism is not a disease. It's not something that needs to be get rid of. It's something that needs to be accepted into society. And that goes to the terminology, like you were saying about depression. Oh, just smile. Just it's not a switch. You don't just turn it off. And just like autism, you can't get over autism. It's something that's with you, and they should be accepted like a normal person because they are normal, extraordinary people like you and me. And one of the things I always say is trauma should not be a competition with anything.
No.
Whether it's loss, whether it's depression, whatever it is. Just because you have a sprained ankle and somebody has a broken ankle, those two shouldn't be compared because you're both feeling pain,
Mhm.
and you both should have that safe space to have that conversation, not say one is worse than the other. And being part of this community for a little over a year now, and seeing the ins and outs of conversations, and that's one of the biggest ones. Is I feel like way too many people try to compare their traumas with each other, and while we're gradually having this conversation and we can have this platform and talk about mental health, we're still kind of going backwards a little bit because then that trauma competition and social media is there to make it like a little bit worse and like a step back, even though we're trying to go forward.
That's kind of the one of the things I wanted to hammer on too, is you had mentioned earlier too about young people and depression and suicide. And suicide is one of the highest things that kills more people. And I think that is because of social media. And I've noticed it as a teacher. I've seen it. It's like, in the old days, when it was just you and your friends or whatever, your school, if you messed up, it was just you, between you and your school, whatever. Now the whole world can see when you screw up, and kids mess up. They can't help it, especially teenagers. They're basically going to the wilderness by themselves. The road they walk on these days is so, and I tell their parents this, like, the road they walk on is so much harder than it was for us. I know that's impossible to believe because, oh, these kids have everything. It's like, no, that's the problem. They have everything. They got the whole world at their doorstep.
Absolutely.
They literally, I mean, you look at these miserable little boxes that they carry around, and it's literally the whole world is watching them now, So they really, the need to, the peer groups have just gotten that much bigger. It used to be, oh, well, my clique is my school, my classmates and whatnot. Now it's the whole friggin' planet, and that's impossible. How can you possibly keep on top of all that? You can't be loved by everybody.
Right.
No matter what you say online, someone's going to throw some stones at you, and my students would come to me all depressed and upset because of something they posted online, and somebody's telling them how terrible they are and how dumb they are, and I hope you die and whatnot. And I have to explain to them that unfortunately on this planet, there are those people who are only happy when they're making other people miserable. They see kindness and understanding as weakness.
Right.
That's the thing. They see that as weakness, and they're so determined not to be weak, and it's really hard on them, it's really hard for them too. So I really see, to me, people are like, why do you think there's so much mental health? I said, because the whole world is watching you nowadays,
Under a microscope, right? Yeah.
You're under multiple microscopes now, everywhere you turn, there's a camera pointed at you, I was like, you ever notice, well, we don't see any Bigfoot or flying saucer things anymore now that everyone has a freaking camera in their hands. It's like, it's like, there's just so much now. Everybody's watching you, and kids especially, they want acceptance from their peers. But the problem is their peers are now the whole world, so it's, you feel out of place, you feel messed up, you have, you start getting depressed and whatnot, and you don't want to show that to the world because the minute you let that out, they're all going to throw bricks at you, So it's really hard, and I have to explain that to parents. It's like their road is so much harder these days,
Cyberbullying is something that has gotten so bad that there's just no fixing it. And like you said, there's people that just live off of making other people miserable. After the year after I lost my brother, I was in the, I'm part of the wrestling community. I've been a wrestling fan since I was like 7 years old, right? And I have a circle of friends who know my story, know everything, know my passions about wrestling and stuff. And I would share opinions as not everybody's going to agree on everything, and that's okay. Or at least you would think that's okay. They decided to take it upon themselves to mock my brother's death, and they targeted me for well over a year. And it didn't matter how many times I blocked those accounts; they would keep coming back. And I think it's time that parents start realizing just how bad it is for kids to have social media. Like, just in general, like there should be. I would even say keep it like 18 and older at this point, because these kids are getting targeted. These kids are getting bullied. Like, the bullying stuff is so bad, and it's disgusting to see how bad it is.
Because as my brother used to say, bullies are cowards. And social media, being anonymous, allows cowards to feel strong.
Right.
Bullies will bully until you knock them on their ass. Then they
Right.
stop bullying, And unfortunately, social media does not allow that. That's the problem. I think the biggest mistake that all these social media companies made was keeping it anonymous.
Right.
Because when you do that, it's I tell my students, it's like, you really want to know what it's like? Go watch Forbidden Planet. You ever seen Forbidden Planet? The guy hooks up the machine, a thought machine, because he thinks it's going to help everybody, and all that happens is his inner demons are actually manifested now, and you get that id monster. That's like, that's what social media is. It's the id monster from freaking Forbidden Planet.
Right.
It's unleashed, and it just knows destruction, and that's what we've done. We've unleashed everybody's id on social media. There's a 100 million plus id monsters out there right now, and they only thrive by making other people miserable. That's how they get their jollies. It's a sickness, really, but that's how they justify their existences. They can say, hey, my life might be crappy, but at least it's better than yours.
Yeah.
And then they go out of their way to make that happen. It's kind of sad. I would like to have passion and mercy for them, but I've just seen too much.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. Let's talk a little bit about your card game. So there are a lot of inspirations behind creating it alongside your company name called Heavily Medicated Games. Was there an inspiration behind the title of your company as well?
At the time, I started making card games because I decided to pull back from video games. I'm still living in Portland in Oregon, yay. And it's hard to get a team of programmers and designers and whatnot here. This isn't really a hub for it. There's a few, but it's not really a hub. So I wanted to keep making games, and I still do a lot of consulting. I get a lot of calls for folks that want me to patch things up, no problem. But I needed more, and I started doing card games. I made some real simple card games, and I like simple games. I like games that you could learn in 5 minutes and then take a lifetime to master. I like games. I made the first one I did one called Gangster Theater, and then I followed up by making one called Creature Feature, which is based on old movie monsters from the 30s and 40s. I got all these old movie monsters from the 30s and 40s, and it's a real simple game to play. It takes you like 5 seconds to figure it out, and then you can play it. And I tell people, I said, this is a game you play while you're waiting for your other friends to show up. It's like you're waiting for your friends. Mick's going to be 10 minutes late. Damn. All right. Oh, here, break this up. We'll play this for a few minutes while we're waiting for him. It's something that I wanted to do because like I said, I love simple games. I love games that people can play real quick and have some fast fun. And as I began to make more of them, I decided, like I said, I was at that party and the depression thing came up, and I really got very disturbed by that. And my wife, bless her, the font of wisdom that she is, says, why don't you do something on that? Why don't you make a game that spotlights that and does that? It would be therapeutic for you and for everybody else. And that became the tagline for the company, actually, for Heavily Medicated Games. Our tagline is fun is therapeutic, because fun is therapeutic. And Heavily Medicated Games, because at the time I was taking treatments for depression and post, I was taking that for my depression and whatnot. And one thing a lot of folks will tell you is once you start taking medications to treat mental health, you wind up stacking up a lot of them. I mean, they try new ones on you all the time to get the right one. So I had teased the fact that I'm making these games totally heavily medicated right now, and it just hit me. Yeah, heavily medicated games. Why not? Cuckoo birds of a feather flocking together. Cool. And and that's my wife was, what do you mean? It's like, that's the problem with the world. Too many cuckoos, not enough clocks, We're kind of out in the wilderness. We're all looking for our clock to crawl into and be at home, So we started working on that, and I decided Heavily Medicated Games, HMG. I was told not to use it because they're like, oh, you shouldn't make light of people who are struggling with mental health issues. And I'm like, no, that's exactly why you should do it. Because when you're making fun of something, it has no power over you.
Right.
It's like facing a monster and pointing and laughing at him. It's like I'm letting that monster know, you seem to be under the impression that you frighten me.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm a married man. Trust me, I know horror stories. Okay. It's like, you're threatening to drag me down into hell after being married to my wife all these years. Hell would be like Club Med. I tell folks, and I get this all the time. Aren't you worried about this? I'm like, what, are you kidding me, man? Sending me to hell would just be redundant. So yeah, Heavily Medicated Games is my attempt to let people know, don't be afraid of this. Be respectful, sure, but don't be afraid. Laugh at it. Once again, my wise grandfather, the one thing no bully can tolerate, being laughed at. laugh at your, because mental health is a bully. It strikes you when you're feeling down and piles on top. So laugh at it, point and laugh, and let it know. Let mental, it's like, no, depression, you do not frighten me. I will overcome you. I will fight you, and I'll be okay tonight. And you can't be cured from it, but you can just look in the mirror before you go out, you go to that party or whatnot, and said, I will not be afraid tonight. I will not be afraid. We're going to be okay. And that's all it takes. It's so simple and yet so hard. It's rough.
There's two acronyms or like abbreviations of fear that I like to, just to apply, because you mentioned being afraid of mental illness and, just like the struggles that we go through and viewing it as a monster, face everything and rise, which is a play off of the Papa Roach song, and false evidence appearing real. I think both of those hand in hand are so powerful when it comes to like mental health stuff, because like the things that you're afraid of, it's because it's unknown and it feels like it's stronger than it really is until you go to face it. And once you face it and you're in the middle of it, you overcome and you rise out of that smoke a completely different person. You're battle tested essentially.
Yeah. My grandfather used to say, I'm going to quote him again: fear is a good advisor, but a very poor ruler. Listen to him. You're the king. Listen to your advisor, but don't put him on the throne. Don't let him rule. You should listen to your fear, but don't put it in charge. And that's kind of the way I live my life. Is like, I acknowledge my fears. I'm like, yeah, what do you think of this? And I'll listen to your advice, but I'm not going to put you in charge. I'm still the boss
Really?
at the
like it. I would have loved to have met your grandfather.
He was the wisest man on the planet. I think the only tribute I can really give him is the fact the things he taught me when I was 14 are the things I still remember crystal clear today. And he would do it in such a joking, fun manner. He loved to laugh and he loved to make people laugh. And he would slip these little lessons to you without you realizing it. I mean, he his one time we were making sandwiches in the kitchen and he said to me, Alex, good advice is everywhere. You can find good advice everywhere. You just have to keep your eyes open. There's good advice all over. I can find good advice in the refrigerator. And when I challenged him to do so, he opened the door and he pulled out a jar of mayonnaise. And he goes, and he looked at the lid. He goes, right there, look at that. And he showed it to me. I was like, what is it? That was like an expiration date. He goes, no, right here. Keep cool, but do not freeze. Great advice.
Wise man.
Very wise man. Like I said, the wisest man on the planet.
So let's talk about your card game now, because that's the meat and potatoes here. And so you have it titled Daylight. Tell our listeners the motivation behind that title. And I read it was due to a famous movie scene. I would love to hear the name.
In honor of the holiday coming. I was watching the 1933 version of Frankenstein, the original Boris Karloff one. And there is a scene in Frankenstein which just punched me just right. It's when they first see the monster. They first introduce the Frankenstein monster. They open the door and his back is to the door and he turns around real slowly and you see that Frankenstein. They zoom in on his face and they got that Frankenstein face and he's all scary and nasty. And he walks into the room, into the laboratory area, and they open the skylights. And the sunlight comes through and it's black and white. So you can really see the darkness being cut by this shaft of light, pure light. And he steps into it and he sees it and he holds his hands out to it, to the light. And he's trying to grasp it. He sees this light and he's trying to grab onto it. He can feel it. He can see it. And he's trying to grab it. And I was watching that and it just hit me. And I told my wife, I was like, that's depression. That's it. That's what it is to be depressed. You can see the light, you can see it, you can feel it, but you can't grab onto it as hard as you try. You can't grasp it. I was like, oh my God. And then later on in the sequel, there's a scene where they capture him and they have him chained to this chair and the light's coming through the window. And he has just enough, when he can just move his arms just enough that he holds his hands out to the light and he keeps them there and he puts it on his face. It's like water. It's like he's refreshing. He's trying to rub that light. He's trying to grasp it and rub it into himself, that life-giving light. And I saw that and I teared up because I'm like, that's it. That's exactly what it feels like. As a person who struggles with depression, that's what I feel. I feel like I can see that light and I can feel it, but I can't grab it and pull it into me. All I can pull in is the darkness. And then when they close the window, when they close it and he's surrounded by light again, he's confused. And he turns to the doctor and he has his hands out like, where did it go? Help me. He's looking for help. And I always sympathize with Frankenstein for that reason. I never felt he was the quote unquote monster. It's like the monster was the guy who made him. And in fact, I used to tell my students, one of the things I told my students was, I want you to read Frankenstein, read the original novel. I don't care if you use Cliff Notes or what, but read it. And when I was asked why, parents asked me why, why did you make them do that? I was like, I want them to realize that Frankenstein is not about a big clunky monster. Frankenstein is about responsibility and what happens when you don't take it. The doctor does not take responsibility for his creation and it turns bad. Just like in life, I don't care what you create, whether it's music, writing, or a child. Anything that you create that you do not take responsibility for turns bad.
Right.
That's what happened with social media. People don't take responsibility for it, so of course it's going to drift into darkness. You have to take responsibility for it. And that applies to mental health as well. I think that's the first thing we have to do is people, you have to acknowledge your problem. No, you have to take the responsibility for that problem. You have to take the responsibility of, I feel bad.
Right.
And and the person responsible for that is me. Other things might have driven me to it, but I'm still the captain of the ship. I'm still the one at the wheel, even if the phone calls are coming from inside the house, it's still me.
Yeah.
So that was the inspiration for Daylight, was that, to me, mental health is daylight. It's life-giving, it's life-affirming. And those of us who struggle with mental health are grasping for it. That's why for the back cover, I have a hand reaching for the sunlight.
Oh my God, I love that.
That is the thing for Daylight, is the hand reaching for the sunlight. It was just that image of a hand reaching out for that light, for that beautiful life-giving light.
Right.
And that to me was the important thing to stress. Don't stop reaching for it. It's there.
Yeah. And sometimes when we're in the middle of those battles and struggling, sometimes we just want somebody to listen, like not say anything, not offer any advice, just like listen. And I truly think people underestimate the power of silence.
Well, one of my cards. Fortunately, we have another form of madness here, which is a leaf blower. But one of my cards was inspired by my grandfather, which was the card for things that help us are pets.
Right.
Okay, I put pets, and the caption for that was one of his quotes, which is, "Sometimes the friends that help the most are the ones that say the least."
Love that so much.
Because pets are therapeutic for us. They don't say anything, but it's like your dog. He accepts you for what you are. He doesn't care.
Right.
They don't care. They just
know.
Right. They just know, and they accept you. You
Yeah.
know, they don't need to talk to you. They don't need to say anything. They just got to be there and listen to your problems, you know?
Right. And to touch on that, when people say that they're there for you, and oh, I'm here if you need to talk or something like that. I feel like most people in just our society in general are so used to replying to everything. Just like instead of just like taking it in, trying to understand why somebody feels the way that they do, and actually be there for somebody. If I say I'm there for somebody, it's not so I can offer my advice. It's not so I can tell you what you should or shouldn't do. It's if you need someone to listen, I won't say a word. You need a hug, I won't say a word. I don't,
Mhm.
if you don't want me to. If you ask me for advice, I'll give it. But so many people offer unsolicited advice. So
Because
much.
people don't know how to react to that. Because
Right.
they genuinely, a lot of them genuinely do want to help, which comes from a place of caring, that comes from the heart, which is great. That's why you'll hear all the time, oh, if there's anything I can do for you, what do you need? What do you need? What can I do for you? Well, first of all, take the I out of that. Okay. Don't tell your friend, hey, what can I do for you? Call them up and say, hey, let's go grab some dinner. Let me take you out to dinner. You can relax, have a meal, things like that. Even if it's just pizza, let's just go and grab a pizza, sit down and relax. You know, uh, I always tell folks that's what you should do. Don't leave it on the person of what they need. If they
Yeah.
knew what they needed, they would be doing it.
Right.
It's like, don't say what do you need. Say, hey, you want to go grab a pizza? You wanna do that. If you really want to be bold, take a quote from Dr. Fraser Crane. The best line of that whole series: "I'm listening." He used to always, that was his tagline, and it was perfect. I'm
Yeah.
listening. Hey, I'm the doc. I'm listening. That's all it takes.
Right.
And yet that's the hardest thing to do because people, they want to fix things. They want to get in there and help and fix. And they don't realize the best way to help is just to listen to it, just to hear, or even not even to listen. Sometimes we can't. One of the reasons I made this game is because sometimes we can't vocalize what we're feeling. Sometimes we can't put it into words.
Right.
It's hard to describe an emotion. It's like for Daylight, we did, this is the prototype deck. We have artwork and the caption, like we have an artwork picture and then the caption, both of which are done by people who struggle with that particular thing.
Right.
Or in their words. This game was a chance to let people who struggle with mental health issues explain it in their words and their pictures. If they can't do words, pictures.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's designed to be a window. And I say this in all honesty, it's a window for those of us who struggle with it to look out, and for people on the outside to look in to see what we're feeling. This is what we feel like. This is what's going on in here. Because, I would love it if I could just go, come on in.
Right.
I've tried. It doesn't work. All that happens is my brain gets cold. I really want to do that. But, yeah, come on, step inside. I would love if we could do that. But we can't.
Right.
And sometimes you can't express it in words. Sometimes it's just, hey, let's go grab a pizza. Let's go for a walk and I'll hold your hand. Just hold my hand for a few minutes. Just give me that feeling that there's a human out there that's going to be my shield if I need it.
Right. Absolutely. I definitely I wish it was a little easier to talk to people about what you're going through sometimes. That's why I have my therapist. um, but if I have my really good friend Caleb, he always asks me how my therapy sessions go. Sometimes they'll be really open and talk about it, and then sometimes I'll tell him I need a week to digest it because it'll be a really heavy session. I'm just not ready to talk about it. And sometimes it's just like, I don't want him to reply if I'm going to tell him how those sessions went. There's certain things that I shared in those sessions, and I remember one of the first things that I talked to my therapist about was my two attempts. I attempted at my life when I was 14 and attempted again when I was 28. And both of which times was in the care of somebody who is very narcissistic, and I had an abusive relationship with it. It was with my mother. And when I had my session with my therapist and just kind of getting that off my chest and talking about it, I remember not being able to tell anybody else about it for at least a couple weeks. Just how it made me feel. Like anytime a news article or a video or something comes up of somebody passing away due to suicide, it hits me really heavy.
Yeah.
I think it was either this year or last year that we lost the Power Ranger actor. I think it was last year. And I remember when it happened, and I made a short TikTok video saying, how many lives is it going to take for people to listen to men and their struggles? Not saying that women don't struggle. So for my listeners, I'm not saying that at all. But what people need to realize is both sides of the conversation are important, but one side is not getting nearly enough talked about as much as the other side. It's taboo for men to talk about our feelings. It's taboo for men to open up to society because it's like, oh, man up, rub dirt in it. I can't tell you how many times my own father said, oh, just be strong or man up or anything like that. And people don't realize, what that does to somebody. It's like, oh, well, anything I'm going through doesn't mean shit because somebody who's supposed to be my protector growing up didn't make me feel like I was in a safe space.
Right.
And, fast forward 2023, and we're still having this conversation of, men, we can talk about it a little bit openly now, but, like we said earlier in the podcast, we still have so much ground to cover.
Yeah. For me, it was the loss of Robin Williams because I was a huge fan. I've met the man. He was awesome. And when I found out, and I understand why he did it. Yeah. I understand why, because he saw the illness coming and he knew what it would do to him. And when you got a brain like his malfunctioning like that, it would have been, I don't even want to think about what he could have and would have done, because his brain was so over the top as it was to lose that.
Yeah.
But it still punched me very hard in the gut. And it still does to this day. It still haunts me because he was a wonderful guy. And it really ticks me off that a brain that magnificent, that energetic, that so full of energy and life was taken from us, and all my life I grew up with that as well. And for me it was a little different because for me I came from a warrior culture. My father was a police officer. My brother was a big tough guy, real strong guy. He was a black belt. He used to teach martial arts. He was a tough guy. So we were raised to be warriors. I grew up in Paterson in New Jersey, which was a pretty high crime area. Pretty nasty place, and was continually told that you have to be a warrior, you have to be strong to be a warrior, but we tempered that. And this is something that I've carried to this day because my brother used to say, our job as warriors is not to defend the weak. You do not defend the weak. Our job is to make the weak strong. We must help the weak to become strong, because if you defend them all the time, they stay weak. And the minute you turn your back, they'll be lost. Help them to become strong. And it applied for me. I applied that also for my mental health issues. My job, I can't be weak. I must help myself to become strong, and there's different ways to do that. You can train, like for us, it was like, you don't stick up for the weak person when the bully is there. You teach the kid how to fight. You teach him how to fight, because my brother used to always tell, my brother specialized in teaching little kids how to fight, and he used to teach them in his karate class, and he always told them bullies only do that because they're cowards. When you learn to stand up for yourself and knock them back, they'll leave you. They'll go for easier pickings. He's like, that's why our job is to help the weak to become strong. and help other people who are weak to become strong. Help them to learn to fight, to trust themselves, to have that confidence, because when we all do that, when everyone is strong, the bullies will go away. That's when they'll be gone. He used to tell me, never try to save the world. He goes, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm just trying to keep my corner of it clean. If I keep my corner clean, that'll inspire other people to keep their corners clean. And when we do that often enough, guess what? The whole world is cleansed.
Right.
It just starts off. He goes, don't try and conquer the world. Just keep your corner of it clean. Same thing with mental health. Don't try to be like, oh, today I'm going to overcome that completely. You've already lost. When you try and do that, you're trying to climb Mount Everest with one jump. It's not going to work.
Right.
What you have to do is scale yourself back and go, you know what? Today I'm going to focus on this one piece, this one little piece. And people are going to throw stones at me. They're going to say, man up, cowboy up, be tough, that's static. That's just static, Take it for what it is and focus instead on building up your inner strength, being strong. Just focus on that. For me, there's multiple ways. Like you were saying how when you made your attempt, a couple of years back, I made mine. Actually, one of several, and I had to catch myself when I was reaching for my self-destruct switch. Now I'm a poet. I have a dagger that I was going to use. I figured that'd be a poetic way to go. And then I saw the picture of my friend, my best friend, her daughter. I keep her picture right here at my computer at all times. She's such an awesome person. She just started college. I've been with her. I've helped raise her since she was a teenager. And we've always had fun. We've always laughed and sword fight. And she's a nerdette, so we do comic books and comic cons and all the rest. And we just did Zatanna and Zatara for Rose City Comic Con. I was Zatara and she was Zatanna. It was great. And I caught myself as I had my dagger in my hand, just as I was about to do it. I saw her picture there on my computer, and I thought to myself, this voice came into me and said, Alex, when she finds out what you've done, what will be the look on her face? Visualize what will the look on her face be? And I visualized this. Okay, I got it. It's like, now, honestly, if anybody on this planet had made her get that look, would you not go out and beat the crap out of them? Literally. If anybody else on this planet made her get that face, would you not stand up and run over there and just beat them senseless?
Right.
And I went, yeah, I would. Then why are you so special? Why do you get to do it? Why do you get to do that? And I'm like, I guess I don't. That's right, you don't. But what do? I still feel this way. It's like, balance it. Just balance it. So I have that very same dagger. I took it and I took a copy of that picture and a picture of my wife, and I tied them together. And I have them on my drawer. And every time I reach for that dagger, I've got to look at both their pictures and think, do you really want to do that to them? That's not fair. That's selfish, that's not fair. So, I mean, that's my therapy that I use on that one, and it's a little thing. It's a little thing, but it works. And I think that's the key for mental health, especially for a game like this. It's like, you don't need to try and cure yourself overnight. Give yourself the time to do it, and do it in little bites, just one day as it comes.
Yeah. Before I get to the next question, I just really quick want to say thank you for sharing that vulnerable part of your story.
My pleasure. Excuse me for just a second here.
Yeah.
Hang on, I gotta let somebody in over here. Okay, yeah, it's you. Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. To be able to share that vulnerable of a story, and as a man, thank you. Genuinely, thank you so much.
But you see, that's just it. We shouldn't be afraid to share that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because that's the stuff that gives you strength.
Right.
And I want people to see that and hear that so that they can look on their own life and go, what would I tie to my dagger? What is it I would put on, is it a picture of my husband, my son, my children, my dog? Because no one lives in a void.
Right.
No one lives in a void. So think, what would you tie to your dagger? What would be the thing that you would look at that would make you go, wait a minute, hang on, let's take a step back, because no matter how bad things are, if you're gone, that's it. A wise man told me suicide is a temporary solution to a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
Take that step and just think for a sec. What would I tie to my dagger?
Absolutely.
We shouldn't be afraid of that. We shouldn't be afraid to share that. That's how we help each other. That's how we help each other become strong. That's one of the ways we do it. We share the things that work with us,
right,
in the context of how they work. And then
Absolutely.
someone else can pick that. The same thing with daylight. That's the whole concept. Is I want people to look at these and go, yeah, that is what I feel. Or even if it's not, even it's like, well, I don't normally feel that way, but I can see how someone would feel that way.
Yeah.
That's where we begin to get understanding, and understanding destroys ignorance.
Yeah.
It destroys fear. Knowledge destroys the fear.
Right.
And that's all we got to do.
So couldn't agree more. So what are the set rules for your game, and what is the end goal?
The end goal, there's actually one thing we have with this is it's designed to be played with a group, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I want to do was when you first start playing, the first thing you get, and it's like I said, it's very simple. Each card has, there's a picture, because there is a game to it as well. The thing is designed to be, there's a picture, there's a number, there's some symbols, little symbols over here for what the type of, this one here, this card is known as a blocking card. So
Right.
I have a little thing here. These are the things, the blocks are things that prevent us from getting help.
Mm-hmm.
Denial keeps us from getting help. It blocks us, So there's multiple suits in that respect. There's denial cards. I have cards these are the guide cards. I have I don't know if you can see it. There's a lighthouse on there. These are the guides. These are things that we turn to that can help us. Things that we're external forces that we turn to that can provide us with help or guidance. Another one is like I have these here, which these are the symptom cards. These are the things that definitely we experience because mental health issues don't exist in a void. Obviously, there's other things connected to them. I used to think for the longest time that eating disorders was its own separate mental illness, and I found out no, it's not. It's a symptom of other stuff, but it's not by itself. So I was like, okay, so I didn't realize that symptoms were something,
Mm-hmm.
So the concept of the game, and then of course the actual, and unfortunately I only have 12 cards to do this with, but I have one which are the actual illnesses themselves, and I call them the darks. Those are the darks because they prevent us from reaching that daylight. The game itself is very simple. You get dealt a number of cards, and then each card you have the first card you get is a victory condition. And the victory condition spells out exactly what you have to accomplish with your hand to actually win it. So for this one here, this one is that's a victory condition. It's called, this one's Into the Woods, which is gather 7 dark cards. So you need 7 cards with this symbol on it, with that emblem on it. If you do that, you win. But here's the kicker. This is what I wanted to do this as a group thing. Why I use it for group therapy. There are actually 2 dealt out. There's one that you get a personal victory condition, and then there's another victory condition that's selected from the deck and put in the center of the table, and that is the group victory condition. And everyone in the group has to contribute a card to help reach that victory condition. So you cannot win the game until the group victory condition is met. Once you do that, then you can start working on your hand to see if you can win as well. So you cannot win until you contribute to the group victory. And this is something that came up when I started doing group therapy, because I noticed there are people in group therapy that they don't talk,
Right.
And the therapist has got to really pull teeth to get them to want to talk, So I thought, what would be a way to get people to talk about their issues without feeling on the spot? And that was the genesis of the game itself, is because, a game is something that puts people in a relaxed state of mind. If you tell someone, okay, we're going to do group therapy, we're going to do this and this and this, people put their shields up, because we're not supposed to talk about these things, so you put your shields up, you filter yourself, you don't say everything that's on your mind, you kind of coax it a little bit, things like that. Sometimes you'll make a breakthrough, but some folks are just so guarded and so shielded, they have a hard time overcoming that.
Right.
So I did a game because I was like, a game is something that puts people in a relaxed state of mind, and if you do a group victory condition where everyone has to participate, everyone has to contribute at least one card to making that victory condition, even though it might be a card you need, it might be something you need for your victory condition. You got to think, what's more important, my victory or if I help the group?
I like it. It's clever. Very clever.
That's something right there that's like, because then that makes you think what's really important to you. That helps you to prioritize what's going on in your own mind. It's like, yeah, I could use this card to win win my hand, but until the group helps out and until the group gets strong again, no, it's not going to work. So there's a little strategy there as for how you want to, do you want to emphasize you or the group or whatever? But I wanted to have that as an option so that everyone participates, everyone feels, hey, I may not have won that round, but I helped get there. I helped us all get there.
Right.
That's what we need as people together struggling with mental health issues, the realization that we're not in this by ourselves and we're not in this just for us. We help ourselves when we help other people. That's the meaning of group therapy.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like, like you said with group therapy, I feel like just, obviously the conversation just of therapy in general is a struggle for a lot of people. But add in the group of people, and it's just like, okay, we all have common ground here, but I don't want to share my story because it might not seem like a big deal to anybody else, even though you feel like it's something that affected you a lot. And then when you hear somebody's traumatic story, it's like, oh, then I guess my story is not that bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My life is screwed up, but it's not as bad as yours,
Right. And I feel like a card game is great common ground because, everybody's struggling with mental health. And, while it's not directly talking about your story, it's like, oh, it gets you to think, it gets you distracted and work in that group environment, and it's a brilliant concept. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
How long did it take you to develop it?
The actual gameplay is pretty simple. It's the same. I use the same gameplay engine system that I use for my other card games. I adapted it. I figured, it's a quick, easy system to learn. So don't reinvent the wheel. Just adapt it.
Right.
And the only problem I'm having right now is, quite frankly, I need more cuckoo birds. I have, like I said, I have the prototype, but I want to get more artwork. And I want to get more people who are struggling with the various issues to contribute artwork. And I've told people, it's like, this isn't about, because a lot of folks who would participate don't want to because, I don't have the talent for that. I don't have that. It's like, no, this isn't about artistic talent. Okay. I don't care what your hand can do. It's what's coming from here. It's coming from your heart. Okay. You got to let that do the talking for once. I don't care if it's stick figures, as long as it's in your words, your feelings, what you feel. Even if you splatter red, black, and blue paint on the wall, if that's what you really feel when you think about this emotion or this mental block or whatever, if that's what you're feeling, then do it, use it. It's like, for all the artwork, a lot of the artwork I'm using here is some of it was done by others. Some of it's just placeholder for now, but the important thing I've always said is it has to embody your insight, your feeling on this. When you close
The
your
very
eyes,
person.
yeah, you as a person, when you think like for things like, oh, like some of the guides, like the artwork card, because art is something that I think is very therapeutic, art. And the one I got from Dave was, sometimes my hands can express what I'm feeling better than my mouth. My hand knows what to do. That's brilliant. I was like, yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And it's different for everybody else. People might have a whole different setup, a whole different view on it.
Right.
So that's kind of where I was going with this. That's kind of the idea. I wanted this, like I said, I want this to be our window,
Right.
Both to look out of and to have other people look in, to say, hey, this is what's going on in our minds right now. This is where I'm at. This is what I am feeling and experiencing. And I think if enough of us do this, if I can get this thing spread out enough, I think people will find, yeah, that is the way I feel, and they can make that connection that helps us move forward, helps us overcome it. Even something as silly as a game, I've always told people that. I was like, I just make games. I'm a Hispanic Geppetto. That's my job, I just make toys and games. I'm a Puerto Rican Geppetto, you know.
That's
I
amazing.
you know I when we did that article online, I had doctors calling me from all over the country, sending me emails and whatnot. They want to buy 10 decks, they want to buy 20 decks. Oh, this is gonna be great for my therapy and and I was like, I never meant this to be a treatment. It's like, like I said, I'm a Puerto Rican Geppetto. I just make toys, toys and games. That's my job. My job is to make people feel happy,
Right.
to make them feel better. And if I can do it with both of these things, hey, that's bonus for me. That helps me. You better believe when I get this thing finished, I'll be playing it more than anybody. you know.
So I ask every guest that I bring on this question, and hearing the insight that you've given in this podcast, I just know this answer is just going to be amazing, like all your other answers have been. If you can change one thing in the mental health community, what would it be?
Um, if I could change one thing in the mental health community, mental health. you know, um, if I could change one thing, it would be the definition of normal.
Mm,
What is the definition of normal? How many times have we heard that we're not normal? Which always makes me go, what the hell is normal? What is your benchmark for being normal?
right.
You know, uh, I've been a misfit all my life. I mean, I'm a nerd. I've got, you know, game books all over the place. I've got posters of games. Most people have posters of their family up there. I've got posters of video games on my wall. I have a snake for a pet. I have tarantulas for pets. I mean, I've always been an oddball. So if I could change one thing, I guess it would be, what is the definition of normal? At what point do you say this person's okay, but that one's a cuckoo bird? It's like, and I think about myself, I was like, I might be a little abnormal, but I think back, Pasteur, Einstein, Tesla. I'm in pretty good company.
Right.
If I'm a little if I'm a little abnormal, I'm in good company.
Right. Um, Before my mom and I had a falling out, I think it was like a couple months before we stopped talking. She, tried to cold turkey her mental health medication that she's been taking her whole life, and she was kind of like going through it really bad, like 3 days not taking it, and you could just tell, like visually and audibly, you can hear how bad she was getting. And she's like, I just want to be normal. And then I stopped her. I'm like, Mom, what is normal?
Yeah.
I don't, this is something you've been taking to help you. Normal is something that society tells us it's one thing, when in reality, there is no such thing as normal. Because you cannot go walk in any town, any city, state, country, whatever, and point out somebody to me that's normal, that doesn't have any flaws, that doesn't have any struggles that they deal with, and yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that answer, because normal is a word I hate more than anything, because it's
Yeah.
like
What
it's normal.
what Yeah, who is normal? It's like
Right.
I haven't met many in my business. And you look at the state of the country, even is like, normal. They're not an endangered species. They're friggin' extinct.
Right. It's
And
you
then
know, my brain immediately, because I'm big on movie quotes too. My brain immediately goes to Young Frankenstein, Abby Norma,
Abby
Abby Norma.
normal. I to me, the quest for mental health, I'll use my favorite movie quote on that is Men in Black, which was when
Okay.
Kay tells him, 500 years ago, everyone thought the world was flat. 50 years ago, everyone thought man would never reach the moon. You know, Today you just found out there are aliens throughout the universe. Think how much you're going to learn tomorrow, you know? And that's,
Brilliant.
to me, that's the thing right there. Always catch yourself at the end of the day. And I do this all the time. It's like, just look back on what you learned today, you know, and then think how much smarter you're going to be tomorrow, you know. Uh, Once again, my wise grandfather used to tell me, I'll leave you with his two greatest quotes, the two greatest quotes my grandfather ever gave me, which was he told me, the difference between genius and stupidity, genius has limits.
That's great because you're not wrong.
And that's the difference between the two of them. Genius has limits, And he would also tell me the difference between a fool and a wise man is the fool doesn't learn from his mistakes.
This is true. This is true.
That is how you
Right.
learn. Because you make mistakes, that's fine. Hey, welcome to the human race. Are you going to be a fool or a wise man? Because the wise man learns from his errors.
Um, since you left us with those two quotes, at the end of every podcast, I'd like to read quotes, based on whatever topic, and today being video games. So, or well, just gaming in general, and the therapy feeling of gaming. Um, I have two quotes here. One by I think it's by Lilla Pace, and it goes, "Sometimes life is like a video game. When things get harder and the obstacles get tougher, it just means you leveled up." Um, when I first read that quote, I was just sitting there, searching for a quote that I feel like everybody can relate to. I've been a gamer pretty much my entire life, and it's been something that has helped me get through a lot of the dark times in my life, right? And I definitely feel like, once we get older, and finances start getting harder, or relationships start getting a little more difficult, you always find a way to get through it no matter what. And you know every time you overcome something, you accomplish it, you feel like a completely different person. And I feel like in that healing journey, you're shedding toxic skin and you're leveling up, becoming a new person. So I thought that was a really powerful quote to bring in. And the second one that I had um, was from the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, and it goes, "What is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort?" And it was I'm probably going to butcher this name, but it's Parthenos that says it. Um, and the way that I interpret this quote is, as a human being, we all have flaws. None of us are perfect in any stretch of the imagination, right? And I feel, like you said about kids can make mistakes, and they learn from them. And I feel like as human beings, as we're growing in our teen years, 20s, 30s, 40s, etc., you learn from all the mistakes that you make. And you either right those wrongs with the people that you burned, or whatever may have happened. And you learn from those experiences, and you become a better version of yourself. Instead of being given the tools of the kingdom, you earn those keys. You earn your way into being a better person, to be that beacon of hope for all those people surrounding you. I struggled a lot as a kid. I was bullied a lot in school. I was very to myself. Always had headphones. Always had long sleeve jacket on. I didn't really talk to anybody. Getting older, and after my attempt and going into high school in my 20s and stuff, I started realizing, like, okay, there's a lot of things that I want to express and I still don't know how. This is when I was still, giving my mom chances to be in my life and trying to, give her the benefit of the doubt. A mother's supposed to be there, to love and care for you. And unfortunately, that came with a lot of toxicity and a lot of, rough patches in my life with her that, unfortunately can't be repaired at this time. After my second attempt, the person who saved my life that night was my brother, who I lost. He called me the day I wrote a suicide note on Facebook, and I deleted it like immediately because I didn't want that attention. I just, I wrote it. I had the means. I was going to do it and everything. And he called me and he's like, "Hey, man, I just wanted you to know that I saw what you posted. I saw you deleted it right away, and I just want you to know that I love and I care about you so much, and want you to know that I'm here and I care about you. I see all the things that you're doing, and I see that you're trying so hard, and I want you to reach out to me if you need anything." And the second person I reached out to, like back to back, was, funny enough, my tattoo artist. She has done every tattoo that I have, and most of which, if not all of them, are mental health related. She basically said the same thing as him, and now I won't go to anybody else for work because every tattoo that I've gotten done have been for a reason. She did a memorial piece for my brother on his 2 years of passing, and I told her, I said, it doesn't matter where you move, because she went to North Carolina. I said, I will forever be loyal to getting work from her because of what they mean to me, what she means to me as a person. Bottom line, I want to point out, I think it's better to work for something than it is to be given something, is what I'm trying to get at. Mm-hmm. And, like you said, it's the kids nowadays have everything in front of them, but they struggle at a higher level because of all that accessibility. They don't know the real world outside of a screen sometimes. And that quote, I feel like, just resonated with me heavier than most. So I just wanted to share that little piece of story with you because you were vulnerable enough to share with me. So I wanted to share with you as well.
Yeah. And that's how we get strong.
Yeah.
That's how we take strength, because we look at that and we're like, there you go. There you go. You're not only are you not alone, but you're in good company. Yeah. I think Franklin was the guy who said, a man who stands alone is in bad company. And that's very true. We're here. There's a reason why we're social animals. It's a survival tactic, and that applies to mental health as well. We're social creatures. It's a survival tactic. And if I have to use a cheap little game to help people realize that, I'll do it. I'll do it, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. I'm not fussy about the method, as long as it's done compassionately and humanely. My dad was a police officer. He used to tell me that the three senses are the secret to being a good cop. You need three senses: sense of humor, sense of compassion, and a little common sense. And I think that applies to life itself. That's what Absolutely. It takes to get through life. A little sense of humor, a little compassion, and a little common sense. That's all it takes. There's no great secret to that. It's no great mystery. Right. It's just how you utilize it. So
sorry, man, cut you off.
No.
So with that, before we wrap up here, where can all our listeners find you on social media?
We have a website for HMG Studios. It's me trying to keep it up, and I'm not doing a particularly good job of it because it's just I'm a technophobe. I hate technology. Right. I am a total neo-Luddite, and I despise computers with every fiber of my being. And before you jump in there and say, you make video games, I'm like, you know why I make video games? I make video games so that every time I defeat an AI opponent, it causes the computer pain. With every enemy I zap, I'm like, "Ooh, was that your sister? Ooh, yeah, I hope that was your cousin. Oh, first girlfriend, gotcha." That's how much I hate these damn things.
Was that a Men in Black reference?
No, that's from me. That's my personal feeling. That's an original one. I despise computers. If I could leave your viewers with one thing is, if they would like to contribute artwork or whatnot, if they'd like to do a card, I've got plenty of cards left to be done. I have the complete list of all the stuff that needs to be done. Like I have the titles for everything, self-harm, self-imposed exile, confusion. That's one of my favorites. I mean, if they would like to, give them my email, because that's going to be quicker to get me than anything else. They can have my email. They can email me. I can't pay a whole ton of money because I'm not a wealthy guy. I'm so broke I can't even pay attention right now. But you know, I can pay some. If they want credit for it, we can do that. We could put their credit on the card. If they want to remain anonymous, that's fine too. But if they would like to contribute a card, or if they have something they want to speak up on, that, yeah, just let them know that we'll take submissions that way, as long as it's in a digital format and I can put it on a card. That's it. We're not soliciting any cash or anything at the moment right now. And like you said, things work better when you do them yourself. So I'm doing this out of my own pocket, which is a pretty shallow pocket these days. But like they say, money talks. All mine says is goodbye. But yeah, money and I, we're not on speaking terms right now. But yeah, just give them the email. Tell them if they would like to contribute. We have the different categories on there. They can contribute whatever they would like. They can ask me for a list of available cards, and I'll send it to them. And my only requirement is the artwork come from you, that you do it. No AI generated art, please. I want this is a game about human heart, not computer heart. I don't want to use any AI generated art for that reason. And the caption has to be something that they write. It's something from their words. This is mental health in our words and our images, to show the world, to build that window. So I'm asking for folks to help me build that window.
Yep. I will definitely make sure to add your email and the link whenever I do upload this. And just again, want to say thank you so much for being on this podcast today. I think this has been one of the best conversations I've had.
My pleasure. It's been a lot of fun, and best of luck to everyone out there. Normally I say best of luck to you. No, best of luck to all of us, because we need it. Yeah, right. we need it. And keep reaching for the daylight, folks.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, thank you guys again for the support as always. Till next time,